Hi, this video is about a lesson plan that I developed all around Henry's Freedom Box. The reading measurable objective is for the reading standard 4.1, which is students will be able to determine what this text says explicitly and make logical inferences from it and from the language terms such as Underground Railroad, slave, master, freed, and conductor with about the accuracy of 85%. The social studies standard is SS 4.5, and they'll be able to explain and identify the less issues and trials Henry Brown faced when he escaped slavery from southern United States to the north with 80% accuracy. The book we're going to read is Henry's Freedom Box, a true story from the Underground Railroad. The lesson is going to be on day 3 of a month-long unit on slavery and Ohio's involvement in 1800. So I was trying to incorporate a trade book into this to make it more relevant to the students. Questions before the read aloud, I would have the students on the carpet and we would ask questions like, what do we already know about slavery? How would you escape slavery? What do they think a freedom box is? What do we know about the Underground Railroad? Where is Virginia in relationship to Pennsylvania on our map? So the map would be up in the corner and they can look and see what the difference was. And what do they think it means to be free? After we discuss those questions, we would watch a short 2-minute video that I found on YouTube about Henry Box Brown as an introduction to the read aloud so they get some background on it before we do a read aloud. Next, we have our KWL chart that we would fill out. And we would fill in the K part, which is what I know. The W part's what I want to know, and then what I learned. So we were only going to do the K and the W today before this lesson begins with the read aloud. What I know, they might say that they know what a slave is and define what a slave is. Maybe they learned about what the Underground Railroad is in the past 2 days. Maybe they learned about what the difference is between North and South. Maybe they have an idea of what they think a freedom box means. And then we would fill in the W column about what I want to know. Maybe they want to know what a freedom box is. Maybe they want to know, how would you escape slavery? Why are you a slave? When was this going on? Is the Underground Railroad a real railroad? They may have all kinds of questions. So we would fill this up and it would be on a big easel behind me and the students would take turns filling in this portion of the KWL. Also behind me would be the content vocabulary that I would want them to know. And this is also attached to the lesson plan. These are terms that we went over the past 2 days, but I'm going to reiterate them. So they do know what an Underground Railroad is. We're going to learn what perseverance really means, what the conductor is of a train, the master, a slave, baggage, freed, the station, the market. These are terms they have not heard yet possibly. So I want them to know when we do the read aloud what beckoned really means, and tobacco, and then what vitriol is. And I didn't even know what vitriol is before I started doing this read aloud. And this would be behind me, and the students will be able to refer to it. They will also have a copy of this to use when they're going to do their planting seeds. Next, we would have our read aloud, Henry's Freedom Box, and it is by Ellen Levine, and the illustrators Kadir Nelson. I picked this book because I actually did it with the class I'm in now. They really seem to relate to it and they love the illustrations in the book. During the read aloud though, I am going to pause on some pages to ask them questions. Some students will have the whiteboards and they can write the answers on the whiteboards and just hold them up so I can see them. Other students can raise their hands and answer. We might do a round robin when we're doing the book with the questions. So I would start by introducing the book. They saw the video. I'm going to read the inside to them so they get some background knowledge about who Henry was. I'm going to make sure they understand that it is a true story from the Underground Railroad. And we would start reading the book. I would pause on page 3 and I would have them, as we're going through the read aloud, they're going to focus on different vocabulary terms and how they're using the books. And I want them to raise their hands each time they hear a vocabulary term and see how it's used. And that way they get a better understanding of it. So master and slave are both used on this page. And a question I might ask is, I'm going to read the page. Henry and his brothers and sisters worked in the big house where the master lived. Henry's master was good to Henry and his family, but Henry's mother knew things that could change. Do you see those leaves blowing in the wind? They are torn from the trees, like slave children are torn from their families. And then I would pause and I would ask them, I wonder what Henry's mother meant when she compared slaves to leaves. And I'm going to model this by asking myself and then ask them, what do you think that comparison means when the author said that? And then I would skip to page 8, where later that day, Henry watched a bird soar high above the trees. Free bird, happy bird, Henry thought. They would notice that the word free is on the page, and that is one of their vocabulary terms. But what's the connection about being free and being a bird? Then we would read some more. Oh. Also, I would have on page 17, it talks about market and tobacco. And then how is it possible to sell Henry's children? They talk about it on this page. How can you sell someone's children? Why would you do that? Also on another page, we would pause. And it does mention vitriol, and that's why it's so important to this story. And I would ask them, why do you think that Henry would hurt himself on purpose? Why would he do that with the vitriol? I may be mispronouncing vitriol. The very last page is going to show Henry coming out of the box and the men around him. And why would these men help Henry? And then it says on the bottom, at last, Henry had a birthday. March 30th, 1849, his first day of freedom. And from that day on, he also had a middle name. Everyone called him Henry Box Brown. And is March 30th really his birthday? Why are they saying that is his birthday? And I'll see if they can make the connection. There will also be a big book of this for students to look at when we're doing our Think, Pair, Share. And also they can go online and listen to it on Mayan for the hearing impaired students so they can get a better understanding of the book as it reads it to them. Some questions after the read aloud. Why do you think slavery is bad? Why did Henry want to go north? What's the difference between how slaves and freed people lived? Why did Dr. Smith help Henry? Why is it important to have a birthday or to celebrate one? How did Henry feel when they opened his box? How will Henry's life be different now? And what is your opinion of Henry? Was he crazy? Was he smart? These are just questions to get them to start thinking better and to get a better understanding of the story. They don't need to answer them. It's just to get their brains thinking before we go on to the next Think, Pair, Share activity. Then we will draw names from a popsicle stick jar, and they each have a 1 or a 2, whatever their number is, and that's how they're going to get paired up for the Think, Pair, Share activity. First, they're going to do the Think, Pair, Share on their own. Oh, I'm trying to get it closer. And then they are going to pair up, and then we're going to share out as a whole class on some questions I developed. So what was Henry's plan to get his freedom? This they ultimately need to know. Why didn't Henry say thank you? When he was giving to his master's son, why didn't he say thank you? How was the Underground Railroad different from a real railroad? How would you have felt as a slave? How would you feel if you had no birthday? Would you be able to stay in a crate for 27 hours? What's the connection to freedom with a bird? And can you think of another connection to another animal or another object to freedom? And then their last one, they're going to create their own sentence using free in a sentence pertaining to this story. Then we have planting seeds out of our planting seeds journal that we write in when we are doing reading activities and we're doing creative writing and writing prompts. It's the planting seeds journal. And our prompt is, devise an escape route from the south to the north that you would have taken in the 1800s to escape slavery. They're going to be required to use 5 of those vocabulary terms, and they have the sheet, or they can go up to the board and look at those vocabulary terms. They're going to reflect on the story we just read, Henry's Freedom Box. And they're going to need to be original and creative. I'm not so much going to be grading on their punctuation and grammar as much as they got the comprehension of the story and they understand the true terms and what was going on in the story. They also are going to be able to include an illustration of a map devising their own escape route. So they might show the map from Georgia coming up through Canada if they wanted to. So I wanted to make sure every student had that opportunity to do that. Then we would do... They have this opportunity to play the interactive Underground Railroad game. This is the link to it. They can do it during free time, at home, at the end of the day. It's not required. It's just another way that they can learn more about the Underground Railroad. And it's a really fun interactive game they can go on. So they can incorporate technology into it. And they can play the game on their own with no pressure. I will also introduce our book for the next day. It's Moses. It's When Harriet Tubman Led Her People to Freedom. It is by the same illustrator. So I think it was a really nice connection to connect these two books to read for the next day. And I would just introduce the book, and I would ask them, do we notice any similarities between the two books? Hopefully they notice the illustrator's the same. What do we know about Harriet Tubman? They have learned a couple things, not a whole lot. So we'll see if we can base some of their prior knowledge into this. And how do you think she led her people to freedom? And what do you really think that means? So the next day they know they'll look forward to reading this. Now my lesson plan is based on a perfect day. Hopefully we would get through all of these activities. If not, I do have it strategically done so that way we can do an activity the next day. I can spread it out more if something's going on. If they don't understand something, I can go back to the lesson and reteach some ideas before the next day's plan is done. Thank you.